Hi everyone, welcome to this week's Doodle. This week as I sat down to draw, I decided I wanted something free of rules and pure fun. I just wanted to draw whatever popped in my head, so I decided to do what I call a pattern project. I start by dividing the paper, adding whatever comes to mind, and just going with the flow. Let's get started, but here's a sneak peek at where we end up. Hi, it's K-Red. I want to give a special welcome to my subscribers who are coming back each week. It means a lot that you spend your time with me as we doodle together and find a calm in what can be a chaotic day. First, some lines to help divide the page. Sometimes thinking about the whole page can be overwhelming, so I start with small sections. I first went with my favorite flower pattern. It's comfortable and fun. Don't feel like you have to completely finish a section before you move on to the next one. Just go to what feels right at the moment, and then if something else catches your eye, move on. You'll see that as we move throughout this page, I revisit different squares and different sections and different portions and add to it. So just go with what feels comfortable and is bringing you joy. I encourage you all, when you start a project, to start with something familiar and something that you know you enjoy. It will give you confidence as you move forward. Notice that each time as I finish one section, I just add another small section to work. Don't let the page intimidate you. Just draw one section after another, whatever comes to mind. As we keep moving along the page, I'll add some lines to the petals we made earlier, create a new flower, some of my favorite shapes. For me, these doodling projects, these mandala projects, are all about finding a way to focus on my day. That's why I always do these as voiceovers. In the very first series of this program, you see I did a project similar to this, a pattern project, where I didn't do a voiceover and I talked while I was drawing. Editing that was a source of frustration. There were so many ums and pauses. For me, doodling is all about calming my mind. It's about thinking about my day. It's about processing my emotions. It's about finding a way to calm down whatever is going on around me. So when I do that and talk, it kind of defeats the purpose for me. That's why all these videos for me will have a voiceover. I'll think about who's watching. I am thrilled to see people watching from other countries. I find that very encouraging and exciting, and I appreciate you all. I know I enjoy watching other people's work. I get inspiration and ideas from them, and I hope to be able to do the same for you. Many years ago, when I started my career as a negotiator, I found that I needed a way to unwind at the end of the day, a way to find some quiet and some peace, without just staring at a wall or the TV. I stumbled across the Zentangle website, and for me it fit the bill perfect. I don't know how to draw on my own. I can't look at something and reproduce it. But through the instructions online, I've been able to learn how to put one line in front of another, and it truly is about the journey. I always remind myself to give myself some grace. I think one of the reasons I find this so relaxing and so helpful for me is because drawing doesn't come naturally to me. And being able to just take some time and try to create something is beautiful. I encourage you to give yourself some grace. It doesn't have to be perfect. There's no competition. There's no reward for the product at the end. The reward is in the act of doing, in the act of slowing our breathing, relaxing our shoulder muscles, and thinking about our families, thinking about the things we love, and being able to spend some time to appreciate everything. So as we move forward, and I finish the first few sections, I decided to work a little bit more on what Zentangle would call a string. And rather than doing a common one, I thought having some little blocks would be interesting, like a little checker pattern. And that's what I start with next. Trying to decide how far it'll go, what it's going to add to the page. And it's another one that takes very little bandwidth, very little thinking to do. Just a simple square. I do want to encourage you that if you do struggle a little bit with filling things in, that you use a thicker pen. On that one, I think I was using a 1 because I find it much easier to have a nice thick pen and then able to get that big bold lines. And from there, it's just one line after another. Let's see where it all ends up. So if you remember, I said at the beginning of the page that I wasn't interested in doing a mandala, that I wasn't interested in anything where I had to think that hard. But as always happens, as I work through this project, relaxing and calming down some, I decided to go ahead and give myself a couple circles. Maybe not, we'll have a mandala in them. We'll just have to see. But to start with, after the circles are made, I wanted to do a graph pattern of some sort. I grabbed a pencil so I could make any needed adjustments, and as you see, these lines are not the same width, and I do end up playing with them some and adjusting them some. Just remember, if you do use the pencil, that you make sure the pressure is very light. You just want to make sure that it'll be able to erase easily. This eraser that I use is a really small one. It comes in real handy for things like this. If you're able to splurge a little at some point, treat yourself to something, I would put this pretty high on the list of treats. To be able to erase a small line or a small section has really come in handy for me. I use it quite often and it is one of my favorites. So once I had the graph for him, tentatively okay with it. If I remember right on this day, I still end up going through and making a few more changes. I start to add a dot where each line intersects. Online, you'll find lots of different grid patterns that you can do. And to be honest, at this point when I was drawing, I still wasn't sure what I wanted to do. You don't have to know the end before you start. Just start doing one thing and see where it lends you to. So now that I have the dots, I decided that I'm going to make this pattern. I know it has an official Zentangle name. I am not a Zentangle instructor and I don't want to infringe on them, so I'm not real sure what it's called. But in my mind, it's always like I'm making a parenthesis. They alternate each line. I strongly recommend going all one direction. Once again, I think you've seen this in a pattern of mine before. It's one of my favorites. It does take a little more thinking, so I'm not surprised that it's not done early on in the project because it's very easy to make a mistake. And in fact, you'll see them as we go throughout. There'll be some small mistakes made. But that's okay. We just keep moving and just keep going, giving ourselves that extra permission to not be perfect. Because these spikes are now getting a little lost with that pattern, I go back in with a darker pen so they'll stand out just a little bit more. So I continue, putting in another division, and move on to the next section. On these pattern projects, I like for the divisions to always kind of have a different weight. Some to be thick, some to be thin. The lines that separate the two sections, I usually like to have quite a bit of variance. Now this next pattern is one that I recently did in a short, probably why it was so much on my mind. And I decided to fill it in there. When I went through and made this project, I almost put it in the circle instead, but I thought the abstract shape of it with some short and some long would be really interesting, so I threw it in here. You know me with the center, I always like a dark center. Darken the outline and decide to shade everything in. Finding the right balance between light and dark on these projects takes a little practice. Some I get it right, some I don't, but it is always something that I really like. To fill in these sections, I started using a brush pen. I do like to fill in large sections with a brush pen. It makes a nice, even, dark stroke. The problem I had are these sections got a little small, and my brush pen was a little old where I'd applied too much pressure, and I damaged the tip, so I didn't have a good solid point on it. So I went ahead and switched back to the number 12 to finish it in to try to save with some neat, clean lines. So I moved back down to the bottom of the pattern, start with some circles and orbs, just adding shapes and lines, no rhyme or reason. Remember to give yourself each section to work. Don't be afraid to go back and add as they catch your eye or as you see a spot that needs to be filled in. Throughout this paper, I take time and I step back, I look at it as a whole. Sometimes I turn it so it's upside down or right side up, look at it from different angles. I find that turning my paper can be important. I've really enjoyed being able to look at one section and then come back as a whole and see how they blend together. I really appreciate you being with me. If you'd be so kind, hit the like button or subscribe to my channel. I'm hoping to build a place where people can come together who may not have the artistic ability of others. I enjoy so much the people on the internet and the YouTube who I can see their amazing works with their precision lines and vision is just mind-blowing. But I'm hoping to make here a place for people who are like me, everyday people, working hard, trying to do their best for their family, and just want a place where they can be themselves, relax, and enjoy some drawing. So you can join me as we finish this project in the next video and then have lots more fun in the future. Thank you again, everybody. Have a good one. Stay safe.